Florida State fans, I would not blame you if you still had a smile on your face from ear to ear. I'm sure it feels awfully good. 45-3 is forever going to be etched in your memory, and forever we're going to see it in chats and social media forums. 45-3, 45-3. It's going to go right along with a number of other statements that have been made in this great rivalry through the years. But
Mark,
this
can you say it again? Can you say it
season,
again, Mark? I'm sorry. What was that?
45-3.
Got it. Okay.
That's like a lot to a little,
Yeah.
or a whole lot to a almost nothing. Yeah. Jason Parker's here, NBC6. Logan Robinson, Noel Game Day. Get on over to Noel Game Day for the best in Florida State football coverage. Before we get to the football, guys, I just wanted to make sure with this tropical storm Nicole bearing down on South Florida, you in particular, Jason, just want to make sure everyth's okay.
Yeah, well, luckily the state of Florida actually put end zones along the beach here in South Florida and up the Treasure Coast, and obviously the Canes don't like to go into the end zone, so obviously we should be safe.
Good move
down here in this area. So that was a solid move by the Department of Emergency Management. So
nice.
Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good show. Quick question, actually. I have a question for Logan. Obviously, you have your degree from FSU, so you're not taking any more quizzes, but a quick quiz for you. What team so far in the 9 games this season has scored the least amount of points against Florida State?
I think I would have to go with Miami.
Yes, that is correct. Correct. Those 3
seems
points.
Like a correct answer there.
That's correct. That's correct. And what team has Florida State had the biggest point differential against? What team has Florida State beaten the most this season?
Seems like it was that game that was played on Saturday night against the Miami Hurricanes. Seems like that. We're right on. We can go to Jeopardy right now.
Logan 2 for 2 with that. Yeah, let's just say it was very fun Saturday night inside Hard Rock Stadium. I'm glad Logan was not there because I did not have the bail money to pay for him because Logan would have said the wrong thing. He would have said the right thing to the wrong person. Let's just be honest that. But traffic was very easy to get out of the stadium after the game because, well, let's be honest, their fans left at halftime. So it was phenomenal.
Yikes. That was yikes.
I've got another fun fact for you that you may enjoy that's not specifically directed toward the Florida State series, but the only team in college football to have not covered the spread in one game this year. For the season.
Would that be the Miami Hurricanes?
Absolutely.
But I don't understand how that's possible. I mean, they've lost to us. They've lost to Duke. They've lost to Middle Tennessee State. They've lost to Texas A&M. That loss is getting more pathetic by the day with the way the Aggies are going down in flames. But they did beat Bethune-Cookman. So let's give them credit for that win right there. But just thinking about that, Miami has scored less points against us than Duquesne, Georgia Tech, Boston College. I mean, wow. Miami's worse than Duquesne.
Jason, you just let us know how long you want to take on this Miami bashing, and we'll let you go as long as you want. And then I'm going to turn over to Logan to get the actual Florida State side and what the Noles did right.
No. We're going to talk about the game. We're going to talk about the game because there's plenty of good things to talk about for Florida State. We'll get to that pathetic community college later on in the show.
Yeah, it was good. What I'd do, come on here and say I didn't think it was going to be close, and you thought that was disrespectful, Jason, but I told everybody here in the chat I did not think this game was going to be close. There's a reason why we didn't travel to go see it. There was no reason to go down there. Florida State was going to go down there and take care of business, cover it here. It was more fun to go cover the Bucks, get their win over the Rams there to finally hopefully get back into a winning streak column. But no reason to go down there for Miami. Florida State, Mike Norvell, very focused. Mike Norvell last week during practice. You saw him during pregame, dialed in. This team played about as best as you could, as best we've seen them all season, close to about all 4 quarters there. So, a really nice performance from Florida State, definitely in front of all the recruits that were also there in attendance, about the only ones that stayed in the stands.
It was and I stand by my prediction. I stand by the fact that I thought it would be a much closer game. Even when Florida State was up 28-3 in the second quarter, there was still that concern. Miami could come back. This is a rivalry game. With that being said, I'm wearing black tonight in mourning for what the University of Miami football team used to be. So I'm sitting Shiva for the Canes right now, dressed in black. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. James and I talked about it a little bit. Logan, you and I agreed on this last week. Florida State had not played a complete game up to this point in the season. Through the first 8 games, there was always at least one quarter in every single game where you could say the Florida State disappointed a little bit, or Florida State had a setback a little bit. So they had not played a complete game up until Saturday. And yes, I get that the level of competition was not the same as Florida State had played against other teams this season. But Florida State came out from the opening kickoff and was in control the entire game. Jordan Travis put on, he literally only had to throw for 202 yards in the game, but threw for 3 touchdowns. And yes, his one interception was an overthrow on his part, but he came back after that, and Florida State 2 more touchdown drives in that second quarter of that game. Trey Benson, just look at the numbers. You're talking about 15 carries, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're talking about a defense that held the University of Miami to 188 total yards in that game. This was a complete domination from the jump in this game. And this was it should not have been this way. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But I will give Mike Norvell credit. And Logan, you can cut this. You can post this on Noel Game Day. Get ready for this part right here, because I'm going to give Mike Norvell some credit. And after the game, he gave me a shout out in the post-game press conference. He's like, I knew you were going to be here, because he knows who his South Florida Noel is right here. Mike Norvell has turned this team around from a 42-point loss to Miami in his first season in 2020 to a 42-point win in his third season. This is an 84-point turnaround. Well, this is literally what Florida State has come around. Hell, you go from where Florida State started last season 0-4 to we are now 11-6 in our last 17 games. Almost a 667 winning percentage in our last 17 games. What Florida State is right now, and you could argue that, a 3-point loss to Florida, a 2-point loss to NC State, just trying to think real quick off the top of my head with some of those other losses. So there were a couple of those other losses that were close losses. A 6-point loss to Clemson this year. Florida State is seemingly turning this around. And I think there is a legitimate chance right now. I'm just going to put it out in the universe. Put it out there. Let's see what happens. Florida State could end the season in the bowl game with 10 wins. And if Florida State can go from losing 52-10 in 2020 to Miami, losing to Jacksonville State, to possibly a 10-win program in Norvell's third season, I think the sky is the limit for what the future can bring. Now, obviously, Florida State has a tough road game this week against Syracuse. Mind you, it is a Syracuse team on a 3-game losing streak, but it is on the road. It's a good Syracuse team. You don't know what Florida team is going to show up at the end of the season. It's a Florida team that looked good against a bad Texas A&M team, a Florida team that has a win over Utah, but also a Florida team that has 4 losses so far in the season and could lose this week to South Carolina. So we don't know what Florida team we will see on November 25th. But the sky is the limit right now for what Florida State could be by the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to watch, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That is literally how Mike Norvell has themed it since his arrival, a climb, and we're seeing it right in front of our eyes. Whenever you go, I keep on looking back at those 3 games where Florida State almost came away with one of those wins, but each game being a one possession. Oh, I'm dying. One possession game. Yeah, I'm dying over here. We're almost done with the foot. We're almost done. But that 3-game stretch there where Florida State had to go in, not a fully healthy team, too. You lose Fabian Lovett, your star defensive player. You've got banged up guys all around, and you're still almost close to coming away with those wins where, Florida State really should have came away with the win to get to NC State. Jordan Travis has a mistake, miscommunication. That thing right there, Florida State should come away with the win where you're already bowl game eligible sooner rather than later. Florida State should be beating bad teams. Miami's a bad team. They're a bad team this year. It's first-year head coach, and, we can all talk about Mario Cristobal and what he's trying to do. I'm going to give him the first-year little baby excuse there, but this was a bad team that Florida State knew that they had to go in and beat no matter if it was a rivalry, in my opinion. And then you go into next week or going into this weekend against Dino Babers, who start off hot, but we all kind of predicted or we're keeping an eye on them to see once they face somebody good, are they still going to come away with wins? No, that's not going to happen. Florida State should be, as they are, a favorite going into this. definitely if they have Schrader not available, that's going to be a huge one there. If they don't have Schrader available, this is going to be kind of like how it was against Miami, in my opinion. Florida State, one thing I've noticed too during practice, these practices, and I guess it helps too that you're winning, but a lot more energy, a lot more smiles, a lot more messing around. A lot of the coaches just like being out there rather than how it was last year. And that makes sense, all those losses and everything. But this team continues to get better and better and healthier each week going into this end of the season where, they go on that 0-3 streak there. And this team could have just given up, put their heads down and whatnot. It just shows the growth, the maturity, the culture change that Mike Norvell has shown. And there's still, I want to talk about the Deuce Spann and Mike Norvell exchange that we saw on the sideline, which I thought was huge to show what Mike Norvell has done in this locker room.
And let's be honest for 1 second. Neither one, Logan and I, are saying that Florida State is nowhere close to the championship team they once were. Even in 2013, even during the Dynasty era. Florida State is nowhere near that at this point. And let's be honest. We're a blocked field goal from LSU and a touchdown against Louisville from being a 4-5 team right now. We could be legitimately a 4-5 team if all the bad things happen. But right now, the positive things are going in our direction. If you told me at the start of the season right now that through 9 games we would be 6-3 and our 3 losses would all be by a combined 18 points to the ranked teams that we have played on our schedule, I would have taken that right now after what we had been over the course of the last 5 seasons. So I think Logan is 100% correct. We are going in that right direction. Norvell has us in that right direction. Now here's the point where you have to finish it off. You got a Syracuse team who you're getting Syracuse at the right time. You're not getting Syracuse when they're 6-0. You're getting a Syracuse team that's 6-3 on a 3-game losing streak, who looked bad against Pitt. Let's just be honest. They did not look like the Syracuse team we thought we would see against that Pitt Panthers team. You're getting a Louisiana team at home and a Florida team at home. It's playing out to where Florida State could finish the regular season 9-3 if everything plays out that way. Would I have liked Clemson to not lose to Notre Dame? Sure, because that would have put Florida State in a spot to possibly play the Orange Bowl. But at this rate, give me the Holiday Bowl. Give me the Gator Bowl. Give me the Cheez-It Bowl. Hell, the Cheez-It Bowl, they give out free Cheez-It boxes to the media. So let's do that at this rate. You're going to want to cover that one, Logan. I promise you. I know you love you some Cheez-Its. But Florida State is setting themselves up right to this point where, and I like the fact we're ranked. I just hope that we can build off it. Because the last time we were ranked going into that Wake Forest game led to a 3-game losing streak. So, yes, obviously the level of competition over these next 3 games is much less than Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson. But it's just about focus. And I think Mike has them focused on the next task at hand, which is Syracuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to a few of the plays, there's plenty. You go start off with Ontario Wilson, who had a fantastic week of practice, and he's a guy that shows out on these primetime games all the time. And Jordan Travis puts it right on the money, but I got to give more credit to Ontario Wilson there. Somehow he extends his arm and catches that with both arms out. That was huge for Florida State, and that just creates momentum, and that's what Florida State, Mike Norvell, do the best at, one of the best in the country, if not the best on first drives, man. They can go down there and they can put up points. It's just easy peasy. It's been that way throughout the season, but they kept their foot on their neck, and I think it helps too. You're in a rivalry game. One thing too worth noting, very disciplined Florida State Seminoles team. We talked to Kalen DeLoach after practice today, and we asked what was the difference in that discipline from a couple years back to now, and it just – Norvell preached to us. He told us we've got to focus on ourselves. They're going to try to get us and create flags. They want us to retaliate, but we know we've got to stop. I know Jerry Jones, I think there was a play afterwards where he got punched at. Jerry Jones could have easily gone at the Miami defender, but no, he held back. We also saw later on in the game too, we saw Deuce Spann go out. I didn't get to see it, but it seemed like he had an altercation with the player, Miami player after the game, or not after the game, but after the play. Jason, did you see that out on the see what was happening?
Essentially, it was a retaliatory play, and he went over to the sideline, and on national TV, you see Norvell get into him. But it was not a getting into him like, oh my God, I'm yelling you, I'm belittling you. It was more of a teachable moment. And I think it's the teachable moment you want to see. Norvell was trying to teach him, hey, we can't do that in a game. Yes, obviously, the outcome of the game was already decided by that point. But you have to be careful. When you're in that point right there, Miami had nothing to do but try to take out one of our players. And all you do you throw a punch, you get ejected from that game, you're out the first half against Syracuse. So you just have to think right there about that team moment. So and I want to ask you, because you're the president of the Mike Norvell fan club, what does that teach you? What do you see when you see Mike Norvell teaching the player right there at that moment? What does that say to you?
Yeah, so Deuce Spann at practice as a player, it's nice for us to be able to see him throughout the week and his development since the spring. He's a guy that doesn't get animated. He doesn't talk much, very quiet. He's coachable. Mike Norvell is very hard on him, along with Ron Dugans. They think a lot in him. That's the same way for a lot of players on this team, some younger players, where they think that the future is just through the roof. But to see him, I was in shock to see it on TV, to see him kind of get aggravated there. And that's understandable. I think, Mike Norvell is a very hands-on coach, but, he sat there and was talking to him. And, Deuce Spann wasn't a big fan of maybe what Mike Norvell at that time was saying. Ron Dugans jumped over there. But what I loved seeing is, number one, Mike Norvell going to continue to talk to him. This was later in the game. And, Mike Norvell is still going to coach until they hit 0-0-0-0. But Mike Norvell continues to go over to him and talk to him. But look all around on that TV. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there wasn't players. There wasn't anybody coming around to play right there to hold anybody accountable or talk to them or, kind of reset the nerves, reset the shockers a little bit for the player. You saw Kalen DeLoach. I believe Micah Pittman, too, was also over there. But to see Kalen DeLoach, I asked him today, why I saw you on TV. You're going over there. You're talking to him. And to see a wide receiver in that kind of stress there, and then to see a linebacker who's become a leader on this team go over there and wait till Mike Norvell's done talking to him to have a chat with him. He said, I wanted to create relationships with every player across the team. He said his locker is right in front of mine in the locker room. We built a relationship, so I thought it was my, and my just to go over there and talk with him along with Micah Pittman and a few others. And that's just something that we didn't see in years past, and a lot of players holding each other accountable, but also letting Mike Norvell do his thing, Ron Dugans, and then having these players be around him. I just think that's something that Mike Norvell has been trying to build since his arrival inside of that locker room, of everyone being there as a family. And even though it was late in the game, Deuce Spann not happy, they talked and had a good chat on the sideline, fixed things. And the next play, I believe, had an 8-yard gain play for Spann. So that just shows just how quickly things could be fixed, what Mike Norvell is trying to do with these players and build a lot of development and maturity on the team. And I just thought that was a big moment that shouldn't be looked over at all.
And after the game, he went over and he apologized to Norvell and said, listen, I'm sorry for what happened. Norvell just told him, I love you. I mean, that's what you want right there. I mean, I think the University of Miami should have apologized to their fans for their performance in that game, but, they still have not yet. As of Wednesday, they still have not apologized for that pathetic performance.
I've seen Mario Cristobal's news conferences after about 3 or 4 of these debacles, and what can he say? We're going back to work. We got to build this from the ground up. He just keeps saying the same stuff over and over. So,
if you want to pull up something, Mark,
yes,
that if you want to pull up something and throw it on the screen, I don't normally like to be like Logan and pub myself here, but this week on NBC6.com. We wrote an article. Well, I wrote an article basically saying that this was the lowest point for the University of Miami. And I'm going to say it like this. Logan, you were born in 98, correct? Or 97? 97. Okay. So you were just an infant when Florida State beat the University of Miami 47-0. The biggest win Florida State has had over and you can go read it right now. There's that pathetic excuse of a coach right there, Mario Cristobal, making excuses in his post-game press conference. That in that 47-0 defeat Florida State had over Miami in 1997, Florida State held Miami to 133 yards. That was a Miami team that ended the season 5-6 and was dealing with the probation era for the Canes. That Miami team, even in that game, even in that huge loss to Florida State, did not quit. What you saw the University of Miami do this past Saturday was quit. Miami gave up. It was a pathetic display from a school that loves to talk about how they are, how they're back. And I'm sick and tired of it. and I've covered this team now this is my 16th season covering them. I'm sick and tired of hearing about this. I'm sick and tired of hearing about a school saying they're back when they have no basis for having any justification for saying they're back. This is a team who you're playing your biggest rival and you quit. You come out in the second half and you don't even try. You're 4 touchdowns down. Yet you're getting blown out in the first half. But you get the ball to start the second half and you essentially quit. You're an embarrassment right now to your program. You're an embarrassment to your history. You're an embarrassment to your fan base. You're an embarrassment to South Florida. You're an embarrassment to what the University of Miami football team was at one point. And the best part of it is in the press box. You have all these idiot bloggers. Sorry, Logan, I'm going to take a shot at bloggers for one moment. But you have idiot bloggers for the University of Miami who love to sit here, and I know they're going to sit here in this chat, and they're going to sit there with Cam in the next hour, and they're going to say the same things. We have a winning record over Florida State. 5 rings, 5 rings, 5 rings. Yes, congratulations. You're continuously living in the past. And that's what's paralyzing the University of Miami program. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. You are continuously living in the past and not looking forward to the future. When Florida State lost to Jacksonville State in the most embarrassing loss in program history, I sat here for an hour with Mark, took it like a man, and admitted to the faults of the program. Logan, obviously, of course, missed that show. He had homework or something, whatever excuse he used on that. When Florida State lost to Miami by 42 points in 2020, Logan and I sat here till 2:30 in the morning, taking the abuse from Miami fans, and sat here and admitted to our failures as a program, because that's what you have to do, admitting to your failures. After this game, all you had guys like Will Mallory, Xavier Recepo, you had Mike Norvell, and all they did was nobody wanted to own up to what took place in this game. All they did was talk about, well, we're moving on to Georgia Tech. Oh, we're moving on to Georgia Tech. Like, you have the justification. You own this one. You have to own a 45-3. Sorry, I'm going to use my curse word here, Mark. You have to own up to a 45-3 ass whooping that Florida State gave you Saturday night inside Hard Rock Stadium. This is one that's going to live with you. To those seniors who this was your last game you played against your biggest rival, you lost by 42 points on your home field to your biggest rival. If you can't get hyped up to play Florida State, and I say the same thing about Florida State when we lost by 42 points to Miami in 2020. If you can't just write FSU on the board, if you're in the University of Miami locker room, if you just can't write Miami on the board, if you're in the FSU locker room, and that doesn't get you hyped up to play your best, you should have even taken the field. If that was the effort you were going to put out there, don't even take the field, because that's an embarrassment to this rivalry. This is the greatest rivalry in college football over the last 40 years. There was a 20-season period from 1983 to 2002 where this series combined for 7 national champions and 7 other years where a team, the winner of this game or the team from this game, played in the national title game. 14 out of 20 seasons, one of these 2 teams was playing for the national title. And then this is what we have to see? This is what Miami brings to the table in 2022? This was not a Miami team that was mired in the probation era like the 1997 Miami Hurricanes. This was a Miami team that was predicted to win the Coastal Division. This is all we heard in the offseason. Mario Cristobal is going to bring it. Mario Cristobal is going to lead this team to a championship. Mario Cristobal is going to bring the U back. And this is a Miami team that got shellacked by Middle Tennessee State, got shellacked by Duke, both at home, but their most embarrassing loss was to your rival. You can't get hyped up to play Florida State? You've got guys who grew up watching this rivalry, and you can't get hyped up for that? You're an embarrassment. You can't call yourself the U until you even win a conference. You haven't won a conference title since joining the ACC, but you want us to call you the U? No, you're not. You're not even the University of Miami at this rate. You're just a school down in Coral Gables. You have the same record as FIU right now. That's what you are. You have a worse record than UCF, than Florida, and Florida State. You're 4th on the depth chart in the state of Florida at this point. You're on par with FIU, a school that won 1 game combined in the last 2 seasons. That's who you are right now. You're a pathetic program. Can you get back to being a title team? Sure. I absolutely believe Mario Cristobal has the potential. but you need to own up what took place this Saturday. Even the cat's embarrassed at the University of Miami right now. Even Logan's cat. Logan's cat heard embarrassment and said, "What? University of Miami, an embarrassment program?" Ugh. Yes,
She's loving it.
South Florida. I was in the 8th grade. I drove up from South Florida for that game. I was 100%. And I remember thinking, wow, this is pathetic. But that Miami team showed up 10 times more than what that Miami team showed up. You're talking about a team of 188 yards of total offense. And let's see. Let's take a look at the stats right here. Luckily, I've saved receipts for this. You had a 45-yard rush from Jalen Knighton, and you had one long pass from Ja'Carri Brown. That's the only thing that saved Miami and padded their stats. Otherwise, this was the most pathetic display. And then you want to sit here. You have guys in the press box when Clemson loses to Notre Dame. You had one blogger who, swear to God, I am not even making this up, said, "Oh, well, I think we can take Clemson." Are you kidding me? Yes, Clemson got owned by Notre Dame, but Clemson is going to destroy you in 2 weeks. Pitt, most likely, is going to destroy you in your home finale. And if you play the way you played this week, Georgia Tech is going to beat you this week. There's a potential this Miami team that's supposed to win the Coastal Division could finish the year 4-8. How pathetic is that?
There was the 10-minute rant there, Mark.
I told you it was coming. I'm sick and tired of hearing a Miami team talk about we're back, and this is the same product. And maybe it's just because I cover this team and I'm down here and I'm with them, but it's getting frustrating because I know that Miami has this potential. You're an embarrassment. It's embarrassing that you're parading Tyler Van Dyke out there. Tyler Van Dyke had no business playing in that game, and you've essentially now lost him for the season. Tyler Van Dyke could not throw the ball. He went through 4 completions for 24 yards. He should not have even been suited up for this game, and you're going to parade him out there? It's an embarrassment.
To watch the close-ups of him trying to throw and coming off the field, boy, he was beat up. He was in no shape to try to go in that game.
The last throw he did was nobody even touched him from FSU, and he just threw the ball on the ground and then walked off the field carrying his shoulder. He had no business.
They knew he was hurt. Yeah, they knew he was hurt, but that was their last little chance that they could have in this game because we talked about it on the show. I said, Tyler Van Dyke can't play this. This could get ugly by halftime, and sure enough, it did. I mean, he shouldn't have been out there whatsoever. Mario Cristobal continues to put him out there. Should be against the rules or something. Poor kid. Definitely when you're going against a defense that pretty much is licking its chops at Miami's offensive line. Jared Verse, Derek McLendon, Pat Payton, who also had a really nice game there too, who's going to be a star for Florida State next season. Just licking their chops. I got to give credit to Adam Fuller here too. It's always great to give it to Mike Norvell what he did, which I thought he called. I think he only called like 1 or 2 plays that I wasn't a big fan of. But other than that, man, the defense did what they needed to do, and they took care of business and played how they should against a team that just didn't have a quarterback ready to play whatsoever. And that's how it should be. The expectations in the last couple of years have not been that way. But when you're in your 3rd year for Mike Norvell, these are games that you should go in and dominate. And Adam Fuller, when it's needs to be done, it's done against bad teams. And Florida State's done that multiple times throughout the season in 4 games. So a nice game from Adam Fuller. And I'm expecting a lot of the same going into this upcoming weekend with Florida State being able to go against a nice rushing game with Syracuse. But Florida State has found an answer to do so in a lot of games this season. And we're going to find out on Saturday night, once again, another late night primetime game. The only reason Miami was on that primetime game is because of Florida State's logo. And I do love I think there's a Florida On 3 reporter saying something about making fun of nobody watching Miami, Florida State at 7 o'clock. So let me just, for someone that has maybe one brain cell, could tell you more than the right answer here. Number one, how many phenomenal 7 p.m. games were on this last weekend, including Alabama, LSU? Let's just get that out of the way. And number 2, Florida State, Miami was over by halftime. Who's watching the rest of that if they don't have to? What are we doing here? Just Florida Gators fans, which we'll talk about here in about a week or so. Just absolutely brainless.
And let me say one more thing before I go get my free media meal from the Florida Panthers. Yes, that's right. I'm always a whore for the free media meal. I'll 100% admit that. I'm going to say this one thing right here. I sat here and defended Willie Taggart, and I will continue to defend Willie Taggart, even when somebody continuously blamed Willie Taggart for the problems at the beginning of the Mike Norvell era. And my comment was simply, you have to associate the losses with the coach who's there. Mike Norvell has to own those losses in the 2020 and 2021 season. Calm down there, Ace. Calm down.
Yeah, we've been through this before.
Calm down.
There's mostly, yes, you've got to own them, but that doesn't mean that the previous coaches put you in a great position. And Willie Taggart did a deplorable job at Florida State. There's no question about that. Now, he didn't get enough time to turn it around, but he did a bad job at Florida State. And you can't compare the job that he did at Florida State to what Mike Norvell is now doing at Florida State, especially since Willie Taggart took over a better roster than Mike Norvell did.
Mark, if I can't interrupt you, you're not allowed to interrupt me, buddy. Calm down.
Well, you've been talking most of the time, so I'm going to take over.
I have one more thing to say.
Once in a while to speak the truth.
One more
so
thing
the
to
truth
say.
there is that Mike Norvell is doing a much better job than Willie Taggart.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I have one more thing to say. The point I'm getting to is this. Do I think that the problems at the beginning of this season with the University of Miami, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about the University of Miami the entire regular season, because they have not earned the right for us to talk about them the rest of this point. Do the problems at the start of the season go with Mario Cristobal? No. A lot of that has to do with the way Manny Diaz left that team at the end of the 2021 season. That being said, this loss is completely Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal has to own this loss. This has nothing to do with the way Manny Diaz left that program. This is a Mario Cristobal loss. This is a man who played in this rivalry. This is a man who knows how to get this team hyped up, and that's the product that you put out there. Kevin Steele walking in that stadium looked like he was walking into his own funeral. He looked like, oh my God, we're about to get annihilated in this game. Josh Gaddis looked like he had no idea what he was doing as the offensive coordinator for that team, for the University of Miami. But this one is completely on Mario. You cannot blame Manny for this one. This one is completely on Mario.
Well, especially since Manny Diaz actually coached them to a better record. They were actually capable last year. They went 5-1 down the stretch. They beat a Pitt team that won the ACC championship. They beat a good NC State team. They were actually a decent team last year.
They actually would score touchdowns last year.
Yes. Oh, this team's a train wreck.
9 quarters without the last touchdown they scored was in the third quarter against Duke. 9 touchdowns in 4 overtime periods. They have not scored a touchdown. If you had told me this is what Miami football would be right now, we're done. So you know what, Logan, Mark, on this hour of Florida State Live, the 185th edition, with Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, Logan Robinson, the voice of Noel Game Day, when he wants to, when he's not covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's take one quick second, just bow our heads in a moment of silence for what the University of Miami used to be. Amen.
Okay.
Guys, I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jason.
What's your score prediction? No score
Quick score prediction. I'm a little nervous, I'll admit. I'm nervous that Florida State might have a letdown. I am, Logan. Jacksonville State ruined me. I'm the hurt dog for that factor there. So forever. But I do believe Florida State right now is getting Syracuse at the right time. I think Syracuse is on a 3-game losing streak. I think being at home will help them a little bit, but I do agree with you. I think they're going to miss some key players. I think Florida State, big win against Miami. I'm going to say Florida State 34, Syracuse 17. I think if it was at home, I think I'd be much more confident, but I think 34-17. I think Florida State goes to 7-3, comes home, and it's going to be a very interesting end of the season.
I like it.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you being here.
Jason.
Thanks, guys.
Be good.
All right. Now we will get to our Syracuse part of the show. A little preview with the Orange getting off to an amazing start at 6-0. Actually, as we bring in Kevin Wall from Noon's Magician. Appreciate you being here, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Certainly this was a football team that, in addition to being 6-0, was not only 6-0, was a couple score lead on Clemson and maybe a questionable call or two away from, the way I saw it, from being 7-0. And now Garrett Schrader's hurt. They've lost 3 consecutive games, so the team's in a much different spot right now than they were just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, you mentioned Schrader being out, and that's a key loss for Syracuse this year. He's just had evolved into a threat passing the ball as well as running. And, in that Clemson game, the first half, Clemson keyed in on Sean Tucker, and Syracuse ran a lot of read option, and it opened up early in the game Schrader to get outside and use his legs and his mobility to make some plays. Clemson kind of adjusted in the second half and seemed to, instead of committing 2 players to Tucker, kind of bracketed him with a safety and linebacker, and their defensive line sort of took over. But without Schrader, being on the field, he was limited. Played the first half against Notre Dame, wasn't running the ball, so took away his effectiveness. And then last week, Carlos Del Rio Wilson had his first collegiate start on the road against Pitt and just struggled all day with accuracy, a lot of high throws and overthrows.
What are you hearing, Kevin? And nice to meet you. I'm Logan here. What are you hearing on Garrett Schrader? Because I think that's what all Florida State fans are keeping an eye on this week. Coaches, it's what Florida State deals with, along with Norvell. He does the same thing too. All coaches do, where they're not going to give the full answer, and we're not going to find out until Saturday around 8:00 or during warmups. What are you hearing? Is there some optimism that Schrader will be available, or will this be a kind of thing where Florida State had to go through with Tyler Van Dyke last weekend, where there was some talk about him playing? He played a little bit, but just wasn't fully healthy, and they ended up trying out a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a similar situation. We don't get anything from Dino Babers unless it's a season-ending injury. Schrader has not been available for player media the last 3 to 4 weeks. So that's led to some speculation that he's, nursing something. Babers mentioned lower body, seemed a little concerned in his weekly press conference. So I'd speculate Schrader will come out and warm up like he did last week at Pitt, but then he came back out and wasn't dressed for the game. I think he could be dressed this time, but I think Syracuse, with 6 wins and having secured the bowl game, would probably err on the side of caution rather than throw him out there again when he's limited.
Hey, Kevin, I saw the scene after, I think it was the NC State game. Fans rushed the field at the Dome. Yeah. At that point, I think the team that may have been the 6-0 point to get to the Clemson game. And Dino Babers made a comment, which, he was excited, loved the scene and so forth. But he made a comment about getting to bowl eligibility that I thought it was a bit amusing. Now, I didn't want to take it out of context or take it wrong or read too much into it, but just where is this program in regards to expectations? What is a good season? This would be, in my thought process, Dino Babers' second good season. Of course, 2018 was a really good season, a top 15 finish. Other than that, a lot of 4-8, 5-7 finishes that in some people's eyes placed him on a hot seat. I don't know if he truly was entering this season, but what should this program be accomplishing?
I think, baseline expectations for this year was bowl eligibility. And I think what happens is when you start off 6-0 and then you're ranked and then you go to Clemson and you've got a lead, 2-score lead at halftime, expectations shift. And so the sense around here is that this is another one of those late season swoons. We had people looking at, 6-0, and after they even lost to the Clemson, they looked at Notre Dame, and people weren't looking at what Notre Dame was. They were looking at, there's a team that couldn't beat Stanford, lost at home to Marshall. Syracuse should win that game at home. They looked at Pitt struggling. And then when Syracuse, lost those games, which, some of it had to do with Schrader, some of it had to do with bad matchups with physical offensive lines, pushing an inexperienced and young defensive line around. I think people are a little disappointed now. You get Florida State coming in, playing a lot better than they have in the past. And if they lose another game, I think people kind of feel like, oh, now we're back to the same old Syracuse. But realistically, a 7-win season and then hopefully, winning a bowl game would be a successful year for this team. It's a program that needs to string together a few of these bowl eligible seasons to help with recruiting, to help with depth, to help recruit and get some of the talent back that, a lot of people around Syracuse think of the late 90s and Donovan McNabb and Marvin Harrison, and they don't look at the 20-year history where Syracuse, if you look on Sundays and there's very few Syracuse players that are, playing in the NFL and really limited on the offensive side of the football. And you guys know, you follow college football, and if you're going to have a successful program these days in a Power 5 conference, you've got to have some pro talent on both sides of the ball. And Syracuse is just kind of slowly getting to that point. And I think when we look back at the end of the year, people will have a different perspective. But in the midst of the season, that 6-0 start, as much as it got people excited, it also set them up for disappointment.
I think the biggest growth you've seen from Syracuse, though, this season, this game last year, 33-30, it was a close game. And Syracuse, like you said, starting off hot now, and somewhat of a decline. Garrett Schrader injured. But what have you seen specifically out of Syracuse that you've seen the most growth, where Florida State's going to have to prepare for going into this game, you think?
For the first few weeks, it looked like the offense, but overall, it's been Tony White's defense. And they're beat up on the defensive line, but the duo at linebacker of Michael Jones and Marlowe Wax, each week, they might be starting slow and they're giving up, yards on the ground, but these guys are making plays in the second half to keep Syracuse in the game. People talk about the Clemson game, and that defense created 4 turnovers. One was a return for a touchdown that was a 14-point swing. Jahard Carter, the safety, had the fumble recovery and an interception in that game. He's got 3 games in a row with an interception. And even down Garrett Williams at corner, Syracuse has been able to rely on some talent in the secondary and depth. And that second level of the defense is still making plays, even in this losing streak.
So Kevin, I don't know how much of a chance you've had to look at Florida State, but like you mentioned, having its best season, and got to go back to at least 2017. So what do you see out of Florida State? What do you think in terms of matchups are key in this one, and pulling off what's going to be about a touchdown upset?
Yeah, it's funny because we actually saw Jared Verse last year with Albany. He came into the Dome and made a strong impression. I think he probably left Syracuse that day with an offer from the team, even unofficially, before he went in the portal. But we didn't expect a player on Albany to come in and kind of dominate the Syracuse offensive line. And so he's a guy, the Syracuse offensive line has struggled in recent weeks. If you have Del Rio Wilson back there, inexperienced at quarterback, that sort of pressure. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously, it's Jordan Travis. Syracuse did well against Malik Cunningham early in the season. But containing a quarterback last year, Travis really came on at the end of the game and made a couple plays that got Florida State into position to kick that winning field goal. And so Florida State looks like they're running the ball well, and that just sets up, if you're going to commit 7 or 8 guys to trying to stop the run, that's going to leave you susceptible to some of those deep passes and those deep plays. So I think those 2 guys are key. Syracuse has to find a way to kind of neutralize Verse when they have the ball, control the ball, be able to move it. And then on defense, they've got to try and contain, Travis and keep him from really making those kind of plays that really deflate a crowd. That should be a good crowd. It's a night game, the last home game of the year. People be excited, but Notre Dame came right out and shut up the sellout crowd by getting an interception in return for a touchdown on the first play, and the crowd never really got back into it fully. So,
is this team outside of Schrader pretty healthy going into this game? It's late. Now we're in November. So at this point, guys are dinged up everywhere. But how healthy is this team that Florida State is going in to face?
Not very healthy at all. Syracuse lost 2 starters in the opening week, and it seems like every week someone else goes down, especially on defense. There's questions about Sean Tucker. He obviously hasn't had the impact that he had last year, whether he's injured or if it's just kind of a factor of the new offensive scheme. One of the players that went out in the first week was Chris Elmore, who was kind of the utility guy for Syracuse, but played offensive lineman 2 years ago in the COVID year so that Syracuse could field the team. Last year, he was kind of an H-back. He played in the game at Florida State, creates a lot of holes for Tucker and Schrader with his ability to come out of the backfield as an extra run blocker. Syracuse has missed him, I think, more than people want to give credit for, because they were able to win those first 6 games. But it's really shown now as defenses are a little bit stronger and tougher, as the schedule's gotten tougher. Tucker's just not getting, into that second level where he can excel. He's been bottled up, and so the Syracuse team's pretty beat up, and I think that's unfortunate. And then that's where the depth comes in. You've got a former walk-on starting at defensive tackle, nose tackle in the 3-3-5, Kevon Darton, who's played well, but he's 250, 260 pounds. I think the broadcast noted last week that Pitt's offensive line average or smallest guy was 305, and Syracuse's heaviest defensive lineman was listed at 250. And so teams are leaning on that line and kind of wearing them down. And I'd expect that's the game plan Florida State will implement from the beginning too, is, try and really go at them. And Syracuse has tried to, sub in those defensive lines and 3-man units, even during drives to keep them fresh, but it's been a challenge.
This is great information, by the way. I appreciate you hopping on here. This is good, definitely for Florida State fans to get to know Syracuse.
No problem. Happy to help. Wish it was better news for Syracuse, but I think that's the reality, and I think that's the challenge of rebuilding a program that had fallen off so far is when you have those second and third string players, that you're digging into deeper talent, and right now Syracuse is, especially on the defensive line, throwing in some unproven players and some true freshmen that have to hold up in ACC play.
I think he gained a lot of fans across the country because people love a Cinderella story, and when somebody jumps out to that kind of start, they're hoping that with the monopoly that college football has become, that somebody can kind of break up the party. And so there was some hope that Syracuse, and especially I got to say, Clemson was pretty fortunate to escape that game. I only have one other question, and concerns the quarterback position with Carlos Del Rio Wilson. I checked in a few times during the Pitt game. I saw probably half the game, and there was a definite drop off, and just in terms of poise and leadership and running the offense. And there was a lot of just kind of throwing the ball downfield and hoping somebody was going to catch it. Yeah. Is he the guy in line next season, or, where does he stand in regards to, is he a blue chip prospect, somebody that's supposed to be the next guy in line?
Yeah, I think he was, he's one of the guys. Syracuse has a backup who actually played with the ones in the spring game, Justin Lamson, a quarterback out of California, but he injured his knee in spring ball, and so he's out this year. They picked up Del Rio Wilson as a transfer from Florida. He was a 4-star recruit like Schrader, but he didn't play a lot last year at Florida, and I think he came to Syracuse in the summer, so he doesn't look as comfortable in the system that Syracuse is trying to run. He can move around in the pocket, but he likes to throw. He likes to move to throw, whereas Schrader is more of a threat to tuck it and run. And he seems to have a stronger arm than Schrader, but he missed a lot of the intermediate throws. And those were the throws that Schrader was hitting Aranda Getz in the second early in the season, and that kind of created a lot of space for Syracuse. There were a lot of third downs where Schrader was throwing the ball to Gadsden, and they had a good connection over the middle that Del Rio Wilson had him open for a touchdown in the fourth quarter and just threw it high and behind him. And that's what you get with a young quarterback on the road. And I think he'll probably see him if he doesn't start. I think you'll see him in this game. Just by the sounds of it, it seems like he's leaning towards, Schrader not being able to go this week. So we'll see if he's settled down, if the coaching staff has kind of given him a little bit more tailored playbook. I think they did try to throw a lot of those deep balls because he does seem to have a better arm, and it does seem more comfortable for him to kind of air it out. But it's a tough offense to kind of run when you're just kind of taking deep shots and hoping that they pan out.
I have one last question for you, Kevin. And what do you think Syracuse is going to have to do if they want to come away with a win? What are they going to have to do? Is there if they're going to target anybody, who are they going to go after? What do you think Syracuse should do for their game plan if they're going to try to come away with a win? That's Florida State, a team that's hot right now. Syracuse not so well, but still are going to try to compete here. They don't want to. This is probably a not so happy team right now. And Dino Babers is going to try. Dino Babers has competed very well against Syracuse during his last couple of years against Florida State. What do you think Dino is going to come up with his game plan?
I think it's it's like anything else with college football. When you see an upset that you hit either something on special teams or you hit one of those gadget plays. Robert and I came from Virginia with this history of running some trick plays. We haven't seen a lot of it from Syracuse. So if he's got something in the playbook, those are the things that whether it's a wide receiver pass or a reverse or something gimmicky that you can maybe catch a team that's over pursuing early. And if you can jump on them, and make a special teams play. Those are the things that you're going to need to get an upset. And they've got to find a way to get Sean Tucker going. And if they can't run the ball with him, then they've got to use him in the passing game, because he's the one guy I think on Syracuse's offense that's going to match up athletically with a team like Florida State.
Kevin Wall, Noon's Magician. It's on the SB Nation platform. Syracuse Athletics right there. Kevin, we appreciate you stopping by and would encourage everyone to stop on over there, get the look from the Syracuse side as you preview the Florida State game on Saturday night. Kevin, appreciate you stopping by.
Great. Thanks for having me. Have a good game.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you. Good luck this weekend.
All right. There's the Syracuse take.
Yep. That was great intel. I love having on writers and editors that are in the know of things like that, health-wise, that's just huge, definitely whenever you're trying to preview a game, definitely going into November here, Mark, where guys are dinged up, guys are hurt, coaches aren't telling you who's playing, but as writers and people that are there for press conferences and practices, they kind of in the back of their head know who's going to be available and who's not. So it was good to have Kevin come on and give us the real thing. A 250-pound defensive tackle. Whew, goodness gracious.
I heard that. Yeah.
That could be a problem there for Syracuse. But I'm, like I said to Kevin, Dino Babers has always coached a pretty good team against Florida State. They get them up for these games. I'm just wondering now with Florida State in November, the one that is rising with better health and better momentum and better play, whereas you see Miami and now Syracuse. Florida State has done what they need to do against teams that have struggled in the last couple of weeks. So, and I really do like Florida State on the road this year. I thought Mike Norvell has done a really good job starting off in that neutral site game against LSU. He has gotten his team up to play, and he's prepared them very well. It seems like they're a little bit sharper too. So that way, that makes me pretty optimistic about what my score prediction will be this upcoming weekend. And definitely, if there's some health situations going on, definitely Schrader. That's a major problem. And I think too, his first name that he mentioned was Jared Verse. Verse has been licking his chops. He did it against Miami, and I'm sure he's licking his chops against Syracuse offensive line, which hasn't been playing to the caliber that I think Babers has wanted it to the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mentioned the backup quarterback, and I mentioned to Kevin, as you heard, that I checked out quite a bit of the Syracuse game at Pitt, and there's just a completely different look when you've got an experienced quarterback who knows what he's doing, who has an idea, control of the offense. He knows where everybody's supposed to be. He's aware in the pocket. He knows when to run, just all those things. He knows how to go through his progressions. It was one of those deals where the backup quarterback comes in and it's just hoping plays work. It's just running plays, and the quarterback doesn't feel the rush. He was getting sacked and hurried and pressured constantly. It was kind of half his fault for holding the ball and half that Syracuse offensive line just couldn't deal with Pitt's rush, and just the offense was not a good look at all.
Yeah, and going to Syracuse offensive line, you're bringing back Fabian Levitt third week in a row that you have him back, and it goes to show how much of a factor it is to have him alongside Robert Cooper on the inside there, Mark. And then, we've already talked about him, but Jared Verse, Derek McLendon, I think this should be a dominant performance by Florida State's defense once again under Adam Fuller, in my opinion.
Logan, you mentioned recruiting when we were going over the Miami game, and it's not like just because you dominate your rival that you expect like 5 guys to commit the next day. But has there been anything that you've picked up, or do you think there's any kind of movement or any positive signs coming from that game, or just in general over the last few weeks?
There's been a lot of eyes, I would say, for sure. And like I had mentioned earlier when Jason was on the show, a lot of recruits, current commits too, that were in attendance for that game, watching Florida State dominate. And then there was also commits to Miami or to others that were also in attendance watching there to give, that are also in the same recruitment of Miami and Florida State, that, both teams have had them on campus multiple times for visits, official visits, definitely during the offseason, the spring. But to have that performance against your rival, to dominate them in the fashion that they did, and also to show the recruits, hey, this is what happens when we're down by this much in the first quarter, second quarter, fans are leaving the stadium like that.
Mhm.
It was just an atrocious night for Mario Cristobal and what they want to do on the recruiting trail, in my opinion, just to see how badly and how quickly a fan base will quit on you. And I hate it for kids like that. I hate it for the players out there. I mean, I know a lot of those players from Miami, they, they're practicing, they're working hard, all that kind of stuff. And just to see the fan base leave on you like that definitely has got to suck. It hurts. But, football is football. This isn't tennis. We're not playing golf. Football is a man's sport. And you just got to, if you're going to commit to something, you're going to have to commit to it and stick with it. But Florida State came in and stole the show on national television on ABC and prime time, and, was able to have multiple highlights, playmakers making plays, both offensively and defensively, which Florida State and Mike Norvell have preached since his opening press conference, since arriving at Florida State. Come here, we want playmakers. And sure enough, he put a lot of his players on Saturday night out there to make plays and to put on a highlight reel offensively and defensively.
Yeah, I got to think for a potential recruit, and it's difficult for me to get myself in the head of a 18-year-old, but still that, if you're going to an Alabama game, you're going to a Georgia game, fill in the blank, what needs to be sold? If anything, it just needs to be sold against the other Georgias and Ohio States or whatever, to another degree. But when you're talking about a big brand, but that's building, there's always that thought that, if you win a big game and you can show them an amazing atmosphere, that's just an awesome experience. And they get to see, okay, this is what this place is like when it's rocking and big win and this program's headed in the right direction. If you lose it, but you're competitive, you can sell see, we show out for the game. We were here. We were this close. And you know what? You can be the difference. We lost 28-24. You can see how close we are. And the recruit can see it. They can see both the hope of the trajectory in the right direction, but they can also see where they're needed and they could play early. But to see that scene at Miami where the team's falling apart and people are hitting the exits at halftime, I don't know what you sell there.
Run away from the massacre, and that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did, except for the Florida State fan base, so they got to hear the war chant through the crowd there. But it looked, watching that fourth quarter, and then Florida State puts out a cinematic reel after games, and just to watch the fourth quarter and what they were filming, and then just to see the stands like that is just looked like a high school game, if not worse. It was bad, and that's kind of how it was. This is how it usually is. As tonight, we don't see any Miami fans in the chat. We won't see them until the offseason, as usual. They were all in here this last weekend, or this last show, giving us a hard time and making fun of us, calling us clowns and everything. And God forbid, I predicted Florida State to absolutely demolish them. But they're not with us here. We won't see them for a good couple of months until the summer. So it was good seeing you guys. Enjoy your rest. Enjoy every bit of it. You got a big time off season coming up because, like we talked about earlier, Mike Norvell has a momentum. It has momentum on the trail on the recruiting side of things. And he, just dominated that on national television, prime time on Saturday night. Playmakers, defense played well, offense played well. The play calling was set up for playmakers, explosive plays, discipline. The reel of Mike Norvell and Deuce Spann having their exchange on the sideline ended up being a really nice thing and went viral on social media. We saw Jermaine Johnson. He quoted my tweet regarding that, and I want to bring that up real quick because I thought that was pretty big from Jermaine Johnson, who was just a 1 year, not even a full year guy under Mike Norvell. He quoted the tweet of my video talking, watching Mike Norvell talk to Deuce Spann on the sideline. He said, "A lesson that I'm grateful for learning in a similar situation in practice." So he had the same thing going on during one of those days at practice with Mike Norvell. What is your response when things don't go your way? You'll be a better player in person when you make sure your response never succumbs to your emotions negatively. Appreciate you at Coach Norvell. So just a lot of positives came out of Saturday. And, Mike Norvell and watching Mario Cristobal and what he's going to have to do to fix things is what it is. But a nice a nice showing from Florida State that every Florida State fan is going to love. Now have a 2-game winning streak against the Hurricanes. Then they get them back at home next season. Just little things like this. And yeah, this is the video here of Mike Norvell. No hands on anybody. This is just straight to the face. At first we're getting stern. This is how Mike Norvell is in practice. I saw today. This is just who he is as a coach. But these players listen to him. They really do. And look at Brendan Gant here, a linebacker for Florida State on the defensive side. I just don't know how much these guys talk. They don't talk during practice, but to see Kalen DeLoach here, a leader on Florida State's defense, you're seeing Micah Pittman, number 4 here. I can't tell who that other helmet is right there. It could have been Brendan Gant coming over here again. But just to see a lot of these guys, and Micah Pittman, a transfer, both Deuce Spann and Micah Pittman being transfers, they don't have a long relationship with one another, just arriving in Tallahassee. You can see Johnny Wilson also trying over here. This kind of thing, I can't stress enough. You did not see this in years past, and we had been preaching for this to happen. I came on here, Mark, during the Willie Taggart era, and I said, where in the hell is the accountability on this team? Nobody is calling one another out. No one is pulling each other aside, talking with them, getting over emotions like this. You would go back to Dontavius Jackson pulling things left and right, and I don't want to, bash on him whatsoever. But there was things where on the sideline, things were just continued to not get better there. And that was under Willie Taggart. And it all starts with coaching up top. Mike Norvell has set a standard now. And that's how it'll be. And that standard is not only set from the coaches, but it's set from players below as leaders like Kalen DeLoach on the sideline. So I just thought that was one of the most positive things coming out of Saturday night. And of course, the ass whooping.
Retweet from Jermaine Johnson. That's nice. Good stuff out of you, Logan. Thanks for pointing that out and explaining that. That's great stuff. Since we got to hit the road here, I want to make sure everyone knows where to find you and everything else that's going on at Nole Game Day.
Yeah, we're on. We got a show in about 55 minutes at Nole Game Day. We're going to be previewing. We're going to recap the last little bit of Miami. We did an instant reaction to that right after the game. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We have a Syracuse guest coming on from one of our SI publishers. Then we'll be previewing fully into Syracuse. We'll talk about the Sam McCall situation and the potential transfer thing that happened earlier in the week. And then I'll give quickly my score prediction really quick, Mark. I'm going to go. I got Florida State winning this one 37 to 14. Florida State takes care of business up there in Syracuse.
Okay. Logan, appreciate you. Thanks for being here. Everybody get on back next Wednesday at 6 Eastern. Join Logan and the boys right here on YouTube. Nole Game Day coming up in about 45 or 50 minutes. Look it up right there. Nole Game Day right here on YouTube. Thanks, Logan. We'll see you.
Appreciate you, Mark. Thank you.